Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. So today, we're diving into some really creepy Skinwalker stories I found on Reddit. If you're into that kind of thing, definitely stick around till the end, because these ones are really good. And as always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. But yeah, other than that, let's get right into the first story. I have a story. It isn't mine, but it happened to my uncle. He used to tell this story whenever we went camping, and honestly, it scared the life out of me every single time. So we live in Utah, and my uncle, Mark, went on a mission when he was 19. He was sent to an Indian reservation in Arizona, where he was paired up with a companion named Carl. When they first arrived, there was a lot of tension with the locals on the reservation. The people there didn't really want them staying on their land. Eventually, they made a compromise. Mark and Carl would stay in a trailer on the outskirts of the reservation. Now, this reservation wasn't very big, and it was surrounded by a thick wooded area. On their very first night, they were trying to sleep when all of a sudden, their trailer started shaking violently back and forth. Startled and unsure of what was happening, they crawled under the table for cover. Mark said he could clearly hear something pushing the trailer from both sides, like a group of people. After about 5 minutes, it finally stopped. The next day, they went about their rounds on the reservation and talked to some of the locals. At one point, Carl mentioned to a family that their trailer had been shaking during the night. The family immediately went quiet, then told them they needed to leave. Mark and Carl thought that was strange, but didn't think too much of it. That night, it happened again. The trailer started shaking back and forth. Once again, they hid under the table until it stopped. This went on for 2 more nights. Every time they tried to ask anyone about it, people would go quiet and just tell them to leave. Mark started thinking that maybe the locals were doing it to scare them off the reservation because of the tension. A few days later, they stopped by a small convenience store, talking about how frustrated they were. The clerk overheard them and said quietly, "They can't talk about it. It's forbidden." Confused, they asked, "Can't talk about what?" The clerk leaned in and told them about skinwalkers, evil beings that were once Native American witches. He said if people talked about them, the skinwalkers would come for their souls. Mark and Carl left the store in disbelief, thinking it was just another story meant to scare them. But that night, when the shaking started again, my uncle decided to be brave. He ran to the door, swung it open, and yelled, "Hey!" And that's when he saw them. 3 animals running off. 2 looked like wolves, and 1 looked like a bear, but something was off about them. They almost looked human. As they reached the trees, all 3 stood up on 2 legs and slowly walked into the woods, making a low, unsettling laugh. That was enough for Mark. The next morning, they called their mission president and asked to be moved, and they were relocated that same day. For about a year, nothing strange happened. Then one day, Carl was reassigned to another city, and Mark got a new companion named Jimmy. They had to drive about an hour to pick Jimmy up from the airport. The road they took went right through the edge of that same reservation. They met Jimmy around 8 p.m., and before leaving, the mission president warned him, "We're driving through a dangerous area at night, so we can't make any stops. If you need to use the restroom, now's the time." Jimmy said, "I'm fine," but the mission president got serious and said, "I'm not kidding. You should go now." Jimmy insisted he was okay, so they hit the road. About 30 minutes into the drive, right near the reservation boundary, Jimmy started saying he really needed to go. The mission president told him, "We can't stop here. You'll have to hold it." But Jimmy couldn't. So finally, the mission president pulled over and said, "All right, but stay right next to the car. If I tell you to get in, you get in immediately." Jimmy looked a little confused but agreed. He stepped out and started doing his business. Within seconds, the mission president suddenly grabbed him by the arm, yanked him back into the car, and sped off without a word. Mark and Jimmy were panicking, asking what was going on. But the mission president stayed silent and kept driving faster. Then Mark looked out the window and saw something running alongside the car. It looked like a massive wolf, but it was running on 2 legs. The car was going over 60 miles an hour, and this thing kept pace with them for almost 10 minutes before finally darting off into the trees. When they finally stopped, no one spoke for a while. Jimmy got out, still shaking, and said, "What did I just see?" The mission president looked at him and said, "Next time I tell you to take care of your business, you take care of your business." I'm 25 now, and I live in Utah. I'm curious if any of you have ever seen anything like this before, because I'm pretty sure I saw something, maybe a Wendigo or a Skinwalker. I know that probably sounds crazy. I don't really believe in that kind of stuff, and I've always been pretty skeptical about the paranormal. This happened when I was 17, still in high school, and living with my parents. Our house was in a really small town. The backyard opened up to nothing but empty fields and mountains that stretched for miles before you reached any other kind of civilization. My best friend lived next door, and our backyards basically connected into that same open field. His house was on a different street, one that ended in a small cul-de-sac out in the field. It looked like they had planned to build more houses down that street, but never got around to it. So his driveway was basically sitting in the middle of this empty roundabout, with no other homes nearby. That part becomes important later. I used to stay the night at my friend's house a lot back then. Things weren't great between me and my parents, so I spent most weekends over there. Every once in a while, we'd wake up in the middle of the night to this strange sound, kind of like dragging, mixed with this weird gargling noise coming from the back porch. His room was in the basement, and the window looked right out toward the porch, so we could hear it clearly. It didn't happen every night, maybe a couple of times a month, but every time we got the courage to go check, there was never anything there. This went on for years, but one night still haunts both of us to this day. My friend was getting ready to move away, and we decided to pull an all-nighter, playing games, watching movies, just hanging out. Around midnight, we decided to go for a drive, just to listen to music and clear our heads. We got in his truck, turned on the high beams, and started to back out of his driveway, using the cul-de-sac to turn around. That's when the lights hit something in the field. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. It was naked, on all fours, and its limbs were way too long, bent and folded in strange, unnatural ways. Its skin was pale, stretched so tight it almost looked painful. But the worst part was its face. Its jaw was hanging open, way too wide, like it had unhinged, almost like a snake getting ready to eat. Its eyes were completely black, and they shimmered in the light as it looked right at us. And then, in an instant, it moved, scurrying backwards so fast it looked almost like someone had hit rewind. It disappeared into the brush of the field without a sound. My friend and I just froze. We both looked at each other with the same expression, pale and terrified. Like, "Did you see that too?" We tried to go on with the night like nothing happened, but we couldn't stop thinking about it. Eventually, we just sat in his basement with the lights off, too scared to move, waiting to hear that same dragging and gargling again. But it never came. Sorry, it's not some big dramatic ending, but that's exactly what happened. I don't live in that town anymore, but sometimes when I visit, I still drive past that empty field. And even now, it feels like something's still there, like it's watching and waiting. Even though I can't see it, I can still feel it. Now that would be terrifying to see out in the middle of nowhere. I honestly don't even know what I'd do if that happened to me. I mean, part of me feels like I'd love living somewhere quiet like that. But then stuff like this happens, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not. But what do you guys think of this story? During my time at school, a few rough circumstances left me without a car. Because of that, I had to move into an apartment close enough to my campus that I could still get around easily. It was about a 2-mile trip, and since my city's small downtown sat right between my complex and the school, I figured the best option was to get an electric scooter as my main way of getting around. My city runs alongside a river, and my apartment happened to be right next to it. That gave me a nice view, but more importantly, it gave me direct access to the Greenway, a path that let me avoid all the traffic on my scooter. It was a straight shot from one end of the city, my campus, to the other, where I lived. The Greenway had one big flaw though. There was almost no light for about a quarter mile in the section behind my apartment, right where I got on. My scooter was nice, but the headlight was terrible. So I stopped using it altogether and just relied on my eyes to spot any movement ahead of me. During my whole year living at Riverside, I could probably count on one hand how many people I saw on that path after dark. I guess I was the only one crazy enough to be out there that late, that often. I've seen a few strange things on that path. Once I rode past a homeless person with no clothes on, clearly not in the right state of mind. Another time, I passed a man whose stare cut right through me, even in the dark. He didn't seem happy to see someone riding by with no lights on, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. But of all the encounters I've had out there, there's one I still can't explain, and it's the one that haunts me to this day. I've never told anyone about it because I knew no one would believe me. It started like any other late-night ride home. I made it to the gate behind my complex that led up to my apartment. I've never been easily scared, but as I unlatched that gate, I suddenly felt that same sensation I got the night that man was staring at me, like I was being watched. When I looked down the path, about 20 yards ahead, right under a flickering orange street lamp that marked the end of the Greenway, there was a German Shepherd. It was just standing there, staring straight at me. It looked completely still, like it had been frozen in place. I couldn't see it breathing or blinking, just watching me. Its eyes looked almost human. Even from that distance, I could see them clearly, small, dark, and intense. I felt frozen. A wave of dread washed over me. I didn't dare move closer, and it didn't move either. We just stared at each other, like we were locked in some kind of trance. I don't know how long I stood there, but I couldn't look away. I felt like if I broke eye contact, something bad would happen. The sound of the river and cars from the nearby highway suddenly felt deafening. Then, somewhere further down the path, I heard twigs snap, probably a small animal in the bushes. Before the sound even faded, that thing snapped its head toward the noise like an owl. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, eyes glued to it. Then, out of nowhere, it stood up on 2 legs and bolted into the woods. It moved fast, faster than anything I've ever seen. 1 second, it was there. The next, it was gone. That was enough for me. I swung open the gate, ran up the hill carrying my scooter, and didn't stop until I was in my apartment. I remember sitting on my bed, shaking, just trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I wanted to cry, not out of sadness, but pure shock. After that night, I stopped using the Greenway completely. I'd rather deal with downtown traffic and streetlights than ride through that darkness again. I could handle weird people, but not whatever that was. I never saw anything like it again, and once I finally got a car after graduation, I started to feel safe commuting again. But even now, years later, I still live in the same city, and I can't shake that feeling. Sometimes I'll hear noises at night that make me uneasy. Once, I could have sworn I heard tapping on my bedroom window. I don't think I'll ever be the same after that. The confidence I used to have being out at night is gone. There are things out there that aren't what they seem. Things beyond what we can understand. Don't try to be brave. Don't try to be a hero. Trust me, it's not worth it. This happened about an hour ago, and I wanted to post it before the details fade. I live next to the Little Econ River in Orlando, and I've been wandering around this section of woods for about 2 years now, ever since I moved into this house. I'm very familiar with the area, even though there are no trails. I can even navigate at night without a flashlight, with pretty good accuracy. It's a narrow strip of wilderness between the river and the neighborhood surrounding it, but there's little to no human activity out there, at least not that I've seen. There's a good amount of wildlife though, lots of deer, hogs, owls, the occasional bear, and other typical Florida animals. I've always considered the owls to be friendly, almost good-spirited in the many close encounters I've had with them. Tonight, I went for a walk alone after work to wind down and de-stress from the day. The walk out to the river was perfectly normal, and while I sat by the water for about 20 to 30 minutes, nothing seemed off. It was starting to get dark, so I got up to head back. That's when things started to get strange. Keep in mind, I'm only about half a mile from my front door, but the area looks like untouched ancient Florida. A few hundred feet from the river, I heard an owl pretty close by, so I started looking for it, hoping to get a picture. It hooted a few more times and then flew off. That's when I finally saw it. As soon as it flew away, I caught the unmistakable smell of rotting meat. Now, I like collecting skulls, so naturally I started looking for the source of the smell, thinking maybe I'd find a good one. I started walking around, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. But as I moved, the smell would fade, then grow stronger again in one specific spot. It was weird. I was standing in this little area, maybe 6 feet across, where the smell was the strongest, but I couldn't find anything. It smelled like there should have been a whole deer carcass right there, but there was nothing. I even looked up into the trees, still nothing. And then, just like that, the smell completely disappeared. I've had some strange experiences out in these woods before, but nothing like this. So when the smell suddenly vanished, I knew it was time to leave. As I started walking away, it came back, just as strong as before, but now in a different spot, about 20 feet away from where it was before. I stared into that area for a minute or two, and then the smell vanished again. That's when I really knew it was time to get out of there. I started walking calmly, but quickly back the way I came, and the smell actually followed me for about a minute through the densest part of the woods. Against my instincts, I looked back several times to see if anything was following me, but I didn't see a thing. I had been listening to music the entire time and didn't dare turn it off to try and hear anything around me. I just kept up the pace until I finally made it out of the woods and back into the main park area. As soon as I stepped out, I got this wave of chills down my spine. I half expected to turn around and see something watching me from the edge of the woods, but I didn't see anything. I've always felt an energy in those woods since the very first time I went out there. but I've never had anything cross into the physical like that, where I could actually smell something that didn't seem to have a source. I took the exact same route out and back, and there was nothing like that on my way in. Now that it's completely dark, I'm honestly thinking about going back out there to see if the smell is still there. There hasn't been an update to this story as of now, but I really hope everything's okay with OP if he did go back out there. I just hope he didn't run into anything else, but as of now, it looks like we'll never know. I'd like to share my experience with what was easily the most terrifying moment of my life, and, in my opinion, contact with something truly vengeful. I'm going to do my best to describe this encounter with as many details as possible. I decided to take a walk a few nights ago. I live along the Mississippi River, near East River Road in Minneapolis. I've taken this route many times before, day and night, and had even walked the same path around the same time a few nights before this happened. I had a few strange experiences on my way down to the woods along the riverbank. On my way down the large staircase to the river, I heard a couple talking above me. I looked up the stairs multiple times and saw no one, but I swear I heard one of them say, "He won't make it back." 15 minutes later on my walk, things were going great. I was enjoying my time in the woods, feeling calm and peaceful. Keep in mind, I have a history of camping, hunting, and hiking alone in the woods, and being by myself in the dark has never scared me. I've even been to therapy out of curiosity, and I'm about as stable as it gets. I also have a strong sense of self, and usually think in my own inner voice, unlike how some people describe their thought process. The sun was starting to set, and I decided to keep going. I reached a bend in the path that I couldn't see past, and all of a sudden, a woman's voice popped into my head. "Turn around." I brushed it off and kept walking. Then I heard it again. "Turn around." I picked a log up ahead as my stopping point and kept going. But the second I reached it, the voice screamed in my head, "Turn around." That's when this wave of pure dread washed over me. I started shaking uncontrollably. I turned on my heel and walked back the way I came. Something deep inside me told me that if I didn't turn around right then, I wouldn't make it back. The sun had fully set, and now I was surrounded by total darkness. The feeling of being watched doesn't even begin to describe what I felt. I was being followed. I don't know if it was a person, an animal, or something else entirely, but the sense of something right behind me was overwhelming. I've never known fear like that. I've had panic attacks, heartbreak, and financial stress, but this was something far deeper, a primal, soul-crushing kind of fear. Then I heard the woman's voice again. "Don't look back." So I didn't. I just kept walking, even though I could see shadows moving in the corners of my eyes. I eventually rounded a bend and climbed a hill, and the feeling started to ease a little. I could still sense something behind me, but it felt farther away now. I slowed my pace just slightly, and that turned out to be one of my biggest mistakes that night. In that moment of calm, I heard another voice that wasn't mine. It was deep, raspy, and deliberate, like it wanted me to know it was there. It said, "Hey." Every muscle in my back locked up. My body wanted to run, but something deep down told me that if I did, it would trigger a chase. So I just kept walking, fast but steady, while every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. About 10 minutes passed, each of my steps faintly echoed by another that wasn't mine. Finally, I saw the large staircase that led back up to the street. I told myself I was almost safe, and for some reason, I stopped to take a quick picture of the skyline. Probably the dumbest thing I could have done at that moment. It was the first time I had stopped since all this started. And right then, behind me, I heard 3 slow, heavy footsteps on the pavement. I power walked harder than I ever have in my life. The second my foot hit the first stair, every hair on my neck stood up. It felt like something was right behind me, breathing down my neck. I practically leapt up those stairs. By the 3rd flight, that crushing sense of dread started to fade, and a feeling of warmth and relief filled my chest. All I could think was, "Thank you, God. Thank you." When I reached the top and turned to look back one last time, the trail was completely empty, just darkness and silence. I've never experienced fear like that in my entire life. Wow, I honestly don't even know what to say. I have no idea how I'd react in a situation like that. I'd probably just freeze up, to be honest. What do you guys think of this story? Let me know down in the comments. But yeah, that's going to be all the stories I've got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed them. These were honestly some really good ones. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you all in the next one.